Welcome back to the GenX Experience podcast. This is episode 40, and today we are diving back into perimenopause and menopause. If you don't know, October is Menopause Awareness Month. We talked about this subject last year, and I thought it was appropriate and needed to revisit it this year. One, because I'm still dealing with it, had some changes in medication and things, and still trying to get that protein. Feel like it's a part-time job, but I thought it was important because we are still going through this. This is not like a one-time thing. And I also hope that these conversations help millennials and younger generations who might find this at some time, because every woman is going to go through menopause in some varying degree. And Gen X is leading the charge, and I think it's good, and we need to keep talking about it. Today, I have a very interesting interview with Dr. Betsy Greenleaf, and we're going to dive into talking about Gen X's influence on the conversation of perimenopause and menopause, talk about how the medical community is handling this, how they're advancing, changes we can expect. We're also going to hear about her expertise, as well as talk about why I also think it's important for men to be part of this conversation, as in so they can understand what we're going through as best they can, because let's face it, most of us don't always understand what we're going through on a daily basis. But let's learn a little bit more about my guest. Dr. Betsy Greenleaf is a triple board certified physician, pioneering leader in pelvic and hormonal health, and the first female in the United States to be board certified in urogynecology. With over 2 decades of clinical experiences, she empowers busy people to reclaim their vitality with pelvic peace, hormone therapy, magnetic confidence, and a touch of sexy sizzle. Her work is rooted in integrated personalized care that goes beyond symptom management. She helps patients uncover and address the root causes behind hormonal chaos, energy crashes, belly bulge, brain fog, libido loss, and more. She's a best-selling author, award-winning speaker, and innovative entrepreneur, and she's spent her career making taboo topics like pelvic health, aging, and sex feel empowering, not embarrassing. She's the founder of Femversity.com, a platform for holistic healing and professional education, and the CEO of the Pelvic Floor Store, your go-to source for trusted pelvic wellness products. You can also catch her on as the host of multiple podcasts, including Some of Your Parts, Body, Mind, Spirit, and the Health Explained show. She also holds events like the Happy Vagina Rally, which we will talk about, and she is the best-selling author of You Were Made to Be Unstoppable, and she works as a business advisor for health education tech company House Call VR. She's based outside Princeton, New Jersey, and her clinic blends high-end wellness experiences with cutting-edge medical care, bringing together hormonal optimization, gut and microbiome healing, sexual rejuvenation, lifestyle transformation, and spiritual alignment. And she believes the second half of your life isn't about slowing down. It should be about turning up the volume on your purpose, pleasure, and power. So let's get into my engaging conversation with Dr. Betsy Greenleaf. So I'm so excited to have Dr. Greenleaf on here to talk about all things perimenopause and menopause, because Gen Xers are going through it. So are millennials. And it's not too long before Gen Z will be entering the age where they can start going through it as well. So I wanted to talk about, speaking of Gen X, I wanted to talk about, with your expertise, because you've been a doctor for over 2 decades. And I wanted to ask you, have you noticed differences in the conversations around menopause, say back when you started your career versus now, where Gen X is like, we are not staying quiet?
Yes, definitely. I think probably the big push of why menopause is really kind of having its moment right now is because of Gen X. Because, unfortunately, being trained as an OBGYN, we never got any training in menopause, like literally one lecture out of my whole entire residency. And so I ended up having to learn it on my own with my patients, like when I was practicing. And there really wasn't even a lot of information. Like I even joined, and I'm going to throw them under the bus and they're going to be mad, but it was it's now the Menopause Society. It used to be the North American Menopause Society. And I joined them trying to find out more about menopause and especially how to do hormone therapy. And I really, I came out of residency right when that Women's Health Initiative study came out. So right when everybody was really getting scared of hormones. So none of the organizations were really willing to talk about the use of hormones on anyone. So it was kind of like this Wild West of trying to figure out, well, what do we do with these, patients and people now? And now I'm that age. So I think it's really been Gen X that's been pushing and been like, okay, we need more conversations about this. We need to know what's going on. Like, we're not going to be quiet, and really demanding this to come to the forefront. So there's good and bad though. Like, I'm glad we're doing it and we're glad we're having the conversation. But on the flip side, there's some things I'm starting to see right now that I don't like, is because menopause is really like the hot topic right now. Is that marketing is kind of realizing this, and they realize, oh, wait, like menopause is trending. We can sell now menopause. So we can take our items or products that were just regular products, slap a menopause label on it, and now we can go sell a menopause product. And they realize that, unfortunately, us Gen Xers that are in this, time period, and when we grew up, we probably have had careers or have some money. And so we're more likely to spend, and we're a very large group of people, we're more likely to spend on things that are all of a sudden something that's going to cure or make menopause or perimenopause better. So it's tough, because I'm glad we're having the conversation. At the same time, anytime something becomes popular, you're always going to have the snake oil salesmen that are going to sneak in there and start trying to selling us stuff. So as consumers, it's hard to figure out, like, well, what is it really? Should I be paying attention? What do I really need? And that can be challenging.
Yes, and as someone in advertising, shame on my people. But I'm more aware of it. I worked in pharma advertising for a while, so I know like a little signs, always how to look for things. And I do pay more attention because there's so much misinformation in beauty and health. And I noticed that too, that we're, because we don't know that much about it. We're going through it and we're suffering. So we're like the perfect target to sell things to. And then you have these wellness gurus that get online. And then you have, trainers, a lot of them are men that are trying to tell us like how to work out in perimenopause and whether it's a thing or not. I'm like, nobody asked you because you don't go through this. But yeah, I've noticed that too, that it's like the big hot topic. So brands want to jump in on it, and whether their products are right or not, or whether they have any understanding, it's hard to be discerning about what they're selling.
Exactly.
And I want to go back really quick to the conversation about, you mentioned that, doctors don't really get any training in perimenopause and menopause. And it's so interesting because I watched the M Factor documentary last year.
Yes.
And I was like, so women matter when we're like going through puberty and pregnancy. And then after that, it's like the medical community was like, yeah, you're done. We don't care about you. And meanwhile, like, you'll spend more time going through perimenopause and menopause than you ever will, pregnant or really in puberty either. And it's kind of interesting that they're not helping doctor. You go to medical school and you're like, like, do you think that's going to change or is changing now?
I think there's a big push to change, but I also saw a study recently that said like only 23% of graduating residents feel comfortable discussing midlife issues, especially menopause. So it's getting better, but it isn't still there. And when you start to ask the medical schools and the training programs, like, why isn't this an issue, their answer has been in the past, which is absolutely insane. And so all you Gen Xers, we need to rally behind this one. The answer is like, well, there's just only so much that we can fit in the curriculum. And to your point, there are more women who are like beyond like their reproductive years that are living in the United States, so it's not, and we're living longer. So this is something that needs to be talked about, and it's not going away, and we're not sitting, I always say it's not your mother's, menopause. Like, we're not staying quiet. So it's very important. The one thing I'm battling now, maybe you can help me figure this one out. So when I tell women that I've opened a menopause clinic, when I talk to my 60, 70, 80-year-olds, their response is, honey, I've already been through that. And so one of the things I want to educate people on is yes, the transition of perimenopause into menopause and beyond. That's when people tend to have more suffering if they're going to. Not everybody has a hard time, but if they're going to, the transition is going to be the harder part. And then when you're on the other side, it's not like your health conditions, your health concerns change. You still have the same health concerns of being beyond your reproductive years. And I try to explain it if you were a caterpillar before in your reproductive period, then that perimenopause, menopause is kind of like you're a cocoon, and we know that when a caterpillar is going into a butterfly, it's a crazy process on the inside. That butterfly's body is breaking down and reorganizing, and it's pretty traumatic for a butterfly. So it's definitely what we're going through. We're breaking down our identity, our hormones are breaking down, things are changing. We're who are we, where are we, what are we? And then on the other side, you're a butterfly, and you're a butterfly for the rest of your life. It's not it was okay, well, one thing happened and boom, you went through menopause and it's done, and you don't have to deal with it again. You still have the same health concerns of those hormones being low. So that's and I think the biggest problem is our language, because the word menopause, all it means, pause means stop, like cessation, stopping of. And meno is from menarche, or which is blood. So it's basically just a stopping of the menstrual period. So that's the word that we have. So I think in the English language, our word is terrible. And then I've been trying for years to try to come up with a new word, and I haven't been able to do it yet, because I would love to, and then figure out a way to market that word. But in Asian cultures, the word that they use for menopause translates into second spring. And
Which
I
I
think
love.
that's so much more empowering, because it's not just an end of the period. And yes, it is. And yay, we got one thing good.
Yes.
But it's a whole new transition. It's a whole new life. It's a whole new set of body rules. But this can also be one of the best times of our lives. So yeah.
Yeah, that was the one thing I really loved in the documentary was, because when you're going through perimenopause, you're like, this is never going to end. What is this new symptom that I have? The weirdest things can happen. Because, growing up, we knew that we would go through menopause, but we always thought, I guess it'd be much later in our lives. And all we do, stop having our period, night sweats, mood swings, and maybe have a dry vagina. That's, but
Yeah.
no one talked about the other symptoms. And so, it's just crazy that at least I watching that documentary when they talked about the brain and how once you're done with all this craziness, your brain improves. And I'm which is so nice, because as we get older anyways, you start having some brain issues. But as women, when your hormones are fluctuating, you're what am I doing? Why do I feel this way? Why am I angry? Why am I sad? Why can't I remember things?
Yes.
And it's very.
Why am I crying at commercials?
Right. Yes. Why am I raging at a
Been there.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Crying over things. I'll watch something on TikTok that's here's these stuff, a video, a compilation of 80 stuff, and I'm just bawling. And I'm and then I look in the comments, and I'm okay, I'm not the only one that's having a meltdown right now. But yeah, I think that's one of the things too that you hear Gen X women talk about is we had no idea this was coming because our mothers didn't talk about it.
No.
I don't think my mom had a hysterectomy when I think I was in 8th grade. She was having she was just bleeding all the time. So she had a hysterectomy, like a lot of women of her generation. And I do remember her, I think she was on HRT, but then had to get off of it. And I remember watching her suffer with some mood swings and getting hot and some other symptoms. And I remember at one point being Mom, I love you, but you are real unpleasant and you're suffering, and please go do something. But I got it was a scary time. And unfortunately, as you know, this has continued to affect women where, what is the statistics? It's the rate of how much things dropped off from that study of women going on HRT is crazy. And the other thing I noticed too is it doesn't just impact gynecologists, but pharmacists and general doctors also don't know anything about it. So they're imposing their views when you might have gone to your gynecologist and they've got you on a plan. So do you find that's hard too, to when you're dealing with women who talk to other people and then other doctors, and then they
Oh god,
get all
yes.
confused.
Especially like putting people on hormones and then they see their cardiologist and their cardiologist gives them these horror stories that they're going to have heart attacks and then they come back to me and I'm like, "Oh, that's such old thinking." And cuz really what happened, so the Women's Health Initiative, which was the big study that blew it all up, came out in 2001 in the New York Times. That was the problem. It was kind of like if something came out bad today and got put out on TikTok or Instagram and went viral, like the effect would be crazy. So it got published in the New York Times. It was even then it kind of got blown out of proportion, but nobody really knew. All we knew is like one day we were telling women, take hormones, it's going to keep you young, it's going to keep you healthy, and the next day we're like, no, don't take your hormones, it's going to cause heart disease and cancer and all these bad things. So you had a lot of like women being yanked off their hormones around that time, and so there were a lot of hot flashing pissed off menopausal women. And now when we look back at that study, we go, you know what? It really wasn't, first of all, it wasn't a good study. It was done on older women that maybe based on their age could have had some of these health risks. But even then, the problem in that study was the estrogen progesterone arm, which if we also look at that study, the types of hormones that were used in that study were non-natural hormones, meaning that they are not hormones that naturally occur in the human body. And also taking a step back is like, why do those hormones even exist? And they only exist for business purposes. Not that I'm going to vilify the pharmaceutical companies because they were doing what a business does, which is invent something that they can protect with a patent and then sell. You can't patent naturally occurring hormones. Anything that naturally occurs in the body, you can't patent it. So they just took molecules and tweaked them a little bit and they seem to work in the body like hormones. So then they're like, okay, let's sell this as a hormone and we can protect our intellectual property and make money. And that's what businesses do. So we now know that those type of hormones are incredibly inflammatory and that they're processed in a different way in the body, that the metabolites, what they break down into can and not necessarily, I'm not saying will, but can affect the DNA of cells, which can lead to cancer. It doesn't necessarily, like, you could take those hormones and not get cancer, but there was a higher risk that we know that they can process down that pathway. So they do, because they're inflammatory, they could lead to more blood clots and stroke and heart disease and cancer. So it was really in the progesterone and estrogen arm that was the problem. In the estrogen only arm, even though those were still the non-natural hormones, they never really made a big deal that they saw an improvement in colon cancer, an improvement in bone health with those. So it's just, even then, I heard recently that even the risk of breast cancer in those in that study, I think it was only like a 23% increased risk of breast cancer. And so when you looked at the statistics, it didn't really work out to be that great. But I think with what we know now is that there are natural hormones that don't react in the body the way they should. Unfortunately, we have a lot more research on them. So those are the ones that tend to get supported. But I think using the natural hormones that don't have those inflammatory issues are the better way to go. I think the non-natural ones are actually criminal that they're still on the market, but I don't see them coming off the market anytime soon. I just try to encourage people to use the natural occurring hormones. And some people refer to them as bioidentical. I like to call them, I just feel like that word's been overused. So I like to say natural or bioequivalent. They're equivalent to what's naturally found in the body. So
And it's so interesting too. I mean, we are half of the population and women's health gets ignored. But what's crazy is realizing that, our hormones affect so many things. And as someone who is high risk for colon cancer, my mother died from it, her mother died from it, it's rampant in my family. I want to reduce my risk any way I can. And like, I know that being perimenopausal increases that risk and increases heart disease. Like, it's so frustrating when you're like, great, I finally reached an age where I give 0 Fs about certain things, but I have to worry about my health so much more. And it's just, meanwhile, you're going through all these insane symptoms, and it's really scary and frustrating. And that study did such damage. There was an article I saw, yesterday on CNN, and a doctor was saying like it's one of the most damaging, and I've seen
Oh
other
yeah.
doctors say it's one of the most damaging studies for women's health ever, because it just it scared everyone, it confused everyone. And now as Gen X, like we're still trying to, we're still battling that. And you do see women going, I'm on, it's the best thing ever, HRT. And then you see some women going like, oh, I'm just going to go the natural way. And I'm like, I mean, do whatever's right for you. But
Yeah. And I do think it's a personal decision,
Yeah.
because I've seen on social media, there's both sides. There's like the hormone police that are like, everybody should be on hormones. And then there's the natural police that are like, no, why would I put something? And I'm like, listen, that's the best thing. You have the choice.
Yeah.
So like, I am definitely here to support people either way. I will tell you, having trained as a traditional doctor, it was funny because I had a hysterectomy when I was 41. And this was not too many years, or probably about 10 years after the WHI came out. And I remember too, I was like, I'm not going on hormones because I don't want to get cancer, because I didn't bother to look into it. I just knew what I was being told. So
Right.
I went 5 years without hormones. And finally, I got to the point where it's like, I don't care if it causes cancer, if I grow another head, like just give me those hormones. And now that I've had the time to calm down and dive into the research, I realized, wow, you know what? That was another thing. If you're not on hormones early in that menopausal transition, you don't, the thought is you might not get as many benefits as if you start it later. Um, the other argument that comes up all the time, because our big organizations like the American College of OBGYN, everybody, they got scared too. So nobody knew what to recommend. So their recommendations have been, and I don't believe they've changed it anytime recently, has been put people on it as early as possible and then get them off as soon as possible. So there's this thought of like, okay, you got to go on and then off. Well, we also know in like the integrative and functional medicine world that there's really no reason to stop unless it's just personal decision. So you could be on them your whole entire life. And so like I will do that with patients. Sometimes they'll come in and be like, hey, I've been on these for a while. Should we try tapering off? And I'm like, we'll have a conversation. What are you worried about? And then, we'll go, all right, well, if that's something you want to try, we try. And then some people get to a point, they're like, yeah, no, I think I like them. They stay on it. Or sometimes they come off and they're fine. But that's also another personal decision. There's no really, you have to get off at a certain age or ever stop them. So,
Right.
yeah.
And whatever decision you make, I think the best thing is to make sure you talk to your doctor. Talk to a doctor that's like
Yeah.
going to listen to you, not gaslight you, going to have an understanding so that you can make a decision that is best for your health and, for your peace of mind, and not do I mean, we all, the whole do your own research. Do not go on
Yeah.
WebMD. I learned this when I was in pharma advertising, like just avoid WebMD because you will think you are dying of every
Yes.
disease.
Yes.
Do not use ChatGPT. And yes, you can talk to your friends who are going through it, but like really make sure that you're making a decision that you feel comfortable about, but with as much information as possible, because this is our long-term health. This is not just like
Yeah.
a cold that'll go away eventually. Like this is something that could cause, effects now and later in life. And speaking of changes in the medical industry, I did notice like earlier, I think this summer, they were talking about, vaginal estrogen, and now they're trying to change the black box warnings, which if people don't know, black box warning is like the highest level of warning you can get on a pharmaceutical drug. Like I worked on OxyContin and it had that
Oh,
on there,
yes.
which basically told you how to abuse the drug, which I thought was weird, but like that's when like it's a really scary drug, and they're trying to change that. Do you think that will help women more? Do you think it'll help doctors feel better and pharmacists feel better about prescribing this?
I think it'll help the doctors because, there's always, in any industry, there's always like people that are early adopters that do things. And then there's like it's like a bell curve. Then you have like the majority. So like the majority and the late adopters are the people who are like, I need proof or I need permission to do this. And so there are doctors that fall personality wise, no fault of their own, into that, and they need the permission. So I think, I tend to be an early adopter. So the black box never bothered me because when we put the hormones vaginally, they are getting into the system in such low doses that they're really not going to affect things when you use them like topically and vaginally, and that those in those ways. I will say that even though like the companies that make these products say like, oh, it's not detectable in the blood when you put it on vaginally, I've had people that have used vaginal estrogen and have ended up with breast tenderness. So I do believe some gets into the system, but they were, it was also going back to the Women's Health Initiative. If it had estrogen in it, they were putting like all the warnings, whether you're taking it as in a form that would go through your whole system, or if you were taking a form that just pretty much stayed in the vagina. They were like, the black box was like cancer and heart disease and stroke and, and yeah. So I think it's kind of, it'll just give permission to some of the other doctors that have been scared to use it. So, and it's been tough because I mean, even the gynecologists or the ones that should be comfortable prescribing this stuff, they've been really like, everyone's been just so scared because, I think as a doctor, it's like, first do no harm. And so it's like, I don't know, like the study came out and I don't know. So I just won't do anything. And that's been the response that we've gotten. And, women have been told to kind of like grin and bear it, or here's some antidepressants to deal with things. And, so I think, especially, well, the FDA had a panel hearing, this spring on menopause. So I think, there is a big push for all of this to be changing and for us to get some real good information out there. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I've seen conversations online about, boomers, silent gen, and I guess the next would be like the greatest generation that never, like, well, did they go through menopause and did they have all our symptoms? Why is it I'm like, because they didn't talk about it. And so I guess to answer people's, people are wondering, like, is this something new with the symptoms of like, frozen shoulder, itchy ear? I mean, when I work out, I need a Kleenex next to me because my nose just starts running, or, your joints, like there's so many symptoms. So do you think those other generations, like, did they just had no idea that they were feeling this way? They just were
um
told to suck it up, or?
I think they were going through it, but they also didn't have the stressors that we've had. So stress is going to make anything with hormones 10 times worse, because the process in the body for hormone production and stress hormone productions are in two separate like pathways. So interesting enough, like in a relaxed state, your cholesterol, which often gets vilified, cholesterol is actually a hormone. Cholesterol will come down and be made into your sex hormones. So even when you go through menopause, it's not like all your hormones just automatically disappear. It's just your ovaries have kind of gone into retirement. We still make some estrogen from our adrenal glands. We still make testosterone. We still make progesterone, not as much, but also fat tissue will make some hormones there. So it's not like all of a sudden one day you have hormones and the next day you don't. You're still making some. It's just not enough to really do the trick. But all that has to happen in a nice relaxed state. So if we're stressed, that cholesterol will come down that process and it will go down a different pathway and make cortisol. And
Mm.
so, in very tiny spurts, cortisol is good. It keeps us alive. It keeps us, it's like survival mode. Because if we were walking across like a field of grass and out jumped a lion, we would not want to be reproducing or digesting or healing, which all happens in that parasympathetic nervous system, that relaxation state. We wouldn't want to be making our hormones. We want all our blood and energy going into our muscles so we can fight that lion, run away really quickly. And then when we get to safety, we're supposed to go back into that relaxation. So one of the problems I think nowadays, probably more so even starting with Gen X, is the level of stress in the world is a lot different. So you're already starting off in menopause, and for men, they get andropause. They start having their own changes too. You're already starting with a decreased reserve. So now you're adding stress onto that, and any little hormones that you could potentially be made are getting kind of flipped over into cortisol. So you have that. So our symptoms may be worse. I do still think that, women were having the symptoms, no problems, but there's some other factors that are different in the world today, like the level of stress, the fact that people are being exposed to light. Light affects sleep. So our computers, our tablets, our phones, artificial light, that's going to affect sleep, which is a stressor and which can affect our hormones. Inflammatory foods. We didn't really see some of the health issues from our grandparents or before that we do now, because our foods were so much cleaner. With insecticides and pesticides we have on our foods, and just inflammatory foods like processed foods, and and high sugar content, that is actually a stressor that also can throw off your gut microbiome, which is the bacteria that live in the gut, which all can create stress hormones. So I think as Gen Xers, we're seeing this kind of accumulation of not getting enough sleep, not drinking enough, not eating healthy foods, work stress, career stress, life stress being at such a higher level, adding that to this declining reserve of hormones, and it's just kind of one big thing.
Right. And then when you realize you're in perimenopause, or you start having the symptoms of like, why am I crying? Why am I mad? Why do I feel depressed? And then you start freaking out, which puts more stress on you. And then you're just like, because you don't know what's going on with you. You don't feel like, I remember at one point telling my doctor, I'm like, I feel like I'm having an out of body experience because I don't recognize myself. I literally did not feel like I was in my body. And she's like, yeah, that's the lovely roller coaster of perimenopause, but it just makes you more stressed, which isn't helpful.
And then palpitations can the hormones, they can cause palpitations. I remember getting palpitations like when I was going through that stuff, and like panicking, and then you panic, you're like, oh my God, am I having a heart attack? Like, am I gonna die? And like to find out it was hormonally related, that you can get some heart arrhythmias. And it was like, aha.
Right. Yeah, because like my cholesterol has been high since I've been in perimenopause. Like once I started treatment, like it's been going down because my doctor's like, I'm kind of concerned. And then I'm like, I went in, not that I'm a doctor and I'm not, but I went in and looked at my results for my blood work, and I'm like, okay, it's going down every time. So I wasn't on therapy, now I am. And I'm like, I'm not going to freak out. But if you start looking into stuff, and then, you can really freak yourself out. And we are, like you said, we're under stress from the world. And yeah, our grandparents and great grandparents, they weren't going to giant grocery stores to get their food. They were going to a butcher, and the produce, like, and then afterwards, like, I think World War II, we started doing more of the processed food to make it easier because women were starting to work, etc. And sometimes the advances we do are actually not helpful.
Exactly. Exactly. Not at all.
Then sometimes because of that too, you see, people are like, the wellness gurus, or, the influencers who think they know stuff. Like they take the stuff and they run with it and have you freak out and say, stay away from chemicals. And I'm like, okay, but everything's a chemical.
You
so
can't. And that's, I made the mistake. There are some, I like to do testing, but there's some companies that will test your environmental toxins. And it's probably one of the worst tests I ever did on myself, because I came back elevated for all these crazy environmental, and it was like, what do I do about this? So there are some things that can be done for them depending what they are, but in some ways you're never gonna, in today's like post-industrial world, there's forever chemicals. There's going to be stuff that we just can't get away from. In fact, I can't remember. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm blanking out of this, but there was something I was reading, because I'm actually doing my 4th board certification right now in integrative medicine with Dr. Andrew Weil. And we had a chapter on toxins, and I'm blanking out on this is probably my menopause brain, but I'm blanking out on the name. There is some chemical that we as Gen Xers were exposed to that people after us were not exposed to. And so that you can actually chemically identify a body based on the levels of this chemical. Like, let's say you like came across, I don't know, like God forbid, a dead body in a field. You could basically chemically discover their age based on how much of this chemical was in their system, because it was only a chemical that was being produced during that Gen X time. So I was like, oh great, another fun thing.
I know, I joke sometimes, I'm like, I think boomers and silent gen were trying to kill us. We were like social experiments. Like our playgrounds were definitely hazards. They're like, well, if they're fine.
Gosh.
Yeah, because every generation.
I think it's survival of the fittest. If we can survive the playground, we're good.
We didn't have helmets.
If we survive, no helmets. If we could survive drinking like garden hose water, we're probably fine.
Not to mention the amount of alcohol we drank. Like some of us started in high school, some of us, I mean, I waited until I was, but like in college, the things that we were drinking, like the fact that I
Oh
always
my
joke the fact
God.
that I even have hair on my head from all the stuff we put on our bodies and like
Oh, I
the
know.
things we were
I
using
know.
to like clean our skin and what, like yeah, I'm sure one day they'll be like, oh, Gen X, this is why we're so small because we were test subjects for, and the
Yeah.
millennials and Gen Z and Gen Alpha, like they benefited from that. Although I would still be grateful to grow up in the 80s and 90s where there was no cell phones and,
I know.
Life
No proof.
360. Yes, no proof. And if there are pictures, either we've torn them up or they're hidden or everyone should put in their will. If you find any pictures from me as a teenager, destroy them
Just do
immediately.
that. Yes.
But
I
yeah,
know.
it is crazy how, if you start to think about how many things we're exposed to, not just in our food, but just like sitting in a room, like you will lose your mind and it's
Yeah.
better not to
Yeah.
go down.
And there's only so much, you just got to take a deep breath and just go, you know what? I can only do what I can do. And so let me work with what I have. And I can't go get rid of all the pollution.
Right.
Or God forbid, like, you know what the worst thing they're saying now? I mean, we grew up with fire retardant in our beds and in our pajamas because they were worried about kids like catching on fire in their sleep. I don't understand this. But like apparently that fire retardant was like incredibly toxic and they took it out of all the bedding and in pajamas, but that's what we grew up with.
I
Like,
mean, yeah, I remember them like we all thought we were going to either be swallowed by quicksand or spontaneously combust. Like
yes. Well, you know what? Actually, that's so funny you bring that up. But what is the quicksand thing? Like, I remember as a kid being super fearful of quicksand because I remember it being in every like cartoon or superhero thing.
yes, and I grew up in Florida, so we go to the beach, and sometimes certain parts of the sand would just be, and we're like, oh my god, is this quicksand? Or you'd like be walking in the woods and you'd see a bunch, and you're like, is that quick? Like, yeah, we probably were born stressed because we just
Yeah.
life's not fair, suck it up. We don't want to hear like your feelings don't matter. So I wouldn't be surprised if Gen X, like our perimenopause symptoms are worse because we are just at our max stress pretty much all the time and have been
Yeah,
since
yeah.
childhood.
This is definitely where relaxation techniques come in handy. But the worst thing somebody could ever say to you is just relax, because like you're just gonna be like, really, like I'm just. But one of the things, a simple tool, and Dr. Weil teaches this a lot in his fellowship, and he talks about it all over the place, is breath work, and it's amazing, like just the power of the breath, and I give him credit because I don't want to steal his ideas, but he uses something called box breathing.
Mhm.
We're just actually taking like inhaling for a count of 4, exhaling for a count of 4, holding it for a count of 4, and then, well, I did that wrong. Okay, yep. Inhale for 4, hold it for 4, exhale for 4, and then hold it for 4. And so doing that even just 3 to 4 times can throw you into a nice relaxed state. So problem sleeping at night, you can do that. So something that simple, and it's free. And hot flashes, it's great for hot flashes when you're in the middle of one too, to kind of calm them naturally. They've actually done studies on breath work and hot flashes, and you can stop it. So
I've luckily only had a few hot flashes over, and they've been like situational. I was in the eye doctor once, and the guy was being such a jerk, and I literally thought my body was on fire, and like just from like my stomach, and then started creeping up,
yep.
and my flight or flight, I wanted to run and punch him at the same time. I
Yep.
basically told him his bedside manner sucked, but like it was the worst feeling because you feel like someone just flipped a switch and you're on fire, and
Yeah.
you're like, what's
Oh
going
yeah.
on? And then you're trying to calm yourself down, and yeah. So I feel, for women that go through it all the time, like I can't imagine having to deal with that. Well, speaking of men who do have their own issues as they get older, but I've started to see some men get online and talk about what their wives are going through or their girlfriends are going through to try to help other men understand, because we're not always so pleasant to be around.
Yes.
We don't know what's going on. But do you think it's important that there is some education towards men so they can start to understand what's going on with the women in our lives and not be offended when we're like, please get away from me. You're breathing, your existence, you're chewing.
Yes,
You know.
yes. I've been there. Yeah, I think it's really important. In fact, actually, I don't know when it's coming out, but I just filmed a documentary in Costa Rica this summer on menopause. It'll be on the it'll be put out online. It's revoke RAVOKE.com. It's a health network.
Okay.
But what's really interesting is the producer, who happens to be Bob Marley's nephew,
Mm.
the way he shot it was different than other documentaries. He shot it like a reality show where a bunch of people with perimenopause and menopause came in to Costa Rica, and then the experts were there. It was kind of like, any of these reality shows, but in a nice tropical place. But they actually brought in one of the male producers. He actually was online, and it was really interesting. At first, I'm thinking to myself, he's a sweet man, but at first I was like, what are you doing here? We're talking about menopause. Like, why are you here? But it was beautiful because he was there because he doesn't know what to do with his wife. His wife is going through this stuff. Um, she unfortunately was invited but didn't come. She did not want to come. So he was there like to get help, because he's like, I love my wife. It's like dealing with an alien. I don't know what to say or what to do, and everything I say, like I get my head chewed off, and it was really interesting to see things from his perspective. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I think that, the menopause topic is really important for men to understand too, because if they're not married or have a girlfriend, they have a mother, they have a sister, they have an aunt. Somebody's going to go through this. And so having people understand it, I think is really good, just even just society as a whole, for everybody to understand it and to support it, and for it to be talked about like it's normal. I mean, like, growing up, we never heard about menopause, but like now the next generation, they're going to be hearing it, and they, like, right now I got 20 something year olds are saying to me, like, I don't know what menopause is, but it sounds really cool. Like, they're like, menopause is hot right now and we can't wait to get to menopause. I'm like, what? Really? Like, like, okay, but it's like, I think we're changing some of the talking about it. There's more of an understanding. There's also trying to get away from some of the doom and gloom, because I think some of the doom and gloom that's out there is really to sell products, because unfortunately, if you know marketing, the way you sell products is you got to make something an enemy. Well, right
Yep.
now, I think often they're making menopause the enemy, when it really should be more of, okay, matter of fact, it's a transition. All it is a transition. Here's the thing, transitions are never easy, but here are a whole bunch of tools that you can get through this transition, and then here are things to do to support you on the other side. And I think it should be really more of an empowering message than like, oh, it's this horrible thing and life is going to change and you're going to be miserable. And yeah.
I think Walgreens tried to do that in a recent campaign. I kept seeing it, watching YouTube, and I was like, the ad made no sense, because it was like, I thought menopause was going to be like baking in a kitchen and wearing a, I don't know, caftan. And I'm like, what? And they're like, this is so great. And I feel empowered and I feel sexy. And I'm like, what? Because like, yes, there is aspects you feel like, I don't care and I'm just going to be me and I can, but you do also feel off and you want someone to like understand that. But it was like they were trying to just make it like, this is the best thing to ever happen to you. And it's like, really? Really? Are
Yeah.
you actually, have you been in our shoes? Because yes,
Yeah.
some women have no symptoms, but some of us have a lot. And plus you're trying to find a doctor who will like understand what you're going through. And I was just like, what are you guys, like, I really wanted to know who did the ad, because I was like, is this, did a man write this? Did somebody in Gen Z write this? Because you got
I
it
know.
so, because it
I
has
know,
to be
and
a balance.
it's tough because from a marketing standpoint, it works much better if there's a bad guy.
Yes.
Like, if people hear, like, I've done a couple summits. My first summit that I did, they didn't like the name, but I stuck with it. It was the Happy Vagina Rally, and it was really more to talk about pelvic health and women. And all the marketers were like, no, 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 you can't go with that name. It's too happy. It's got to be like doom and gloom, and that's going to get people scared, and they're going to want to come to you for solutions. And I'm like, Oh God, I hate that. I hate that. But like, and then we did one, it was like the sexual dysfunction summit or something, like, I don't know. It wasn't that doom and gloomy, but you know, but apparently if you make it doom and gloom, it sells better. But I'm having a hard time with that aspect of marketing.
That
So
seems to be a trend with like fear mongering, fear marketing.
yes.
And, I'm like, yeah, but a lot of times with that becomes the misinformation, like that,
Yeah.
this is chemical free. I'm like, that's impossible, or this is bad for you. Nature is better. And I'm like, do you want cyanide? Like, because that's
I know.
natural. Or you can't drink too much water and that can be toxic. And also water is a
Yeah.
chemical. So yeah, there's like, it goes, sometimes people swing the pendulum way too far. I think there has to be like, we understand what you're going through. Yes, it's not great, but like we can empower you, which I wanted to ask about the happy vagina rally and then your website Femversity. So yeah, how did you come up with that name? Because I think it's great. If I saw that as a woman, I'd be like, this is hilarious. I want to know what this is, because we all would like a happy vagina and happy hormones.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, like the Happy Vagina Rally was just like I really wanted to kind of get people talking about pelvic health. I have the pelvic floor store where I sell pelvic health products, and I just kind of like the fact that it kind of rhymed. And that came out of the fact that patients were asking me what what products they should be getting, and I was sending them here and there and everywhere. And then one day, a patient said to me, "Why can't I just buy them all in one place?" And I was like, "Huh, maybe I should take all the products that I'm recommending and make a website." And the funny thing about that is, at the time, I didn't know you could hire somebody for that. I don't know what I was thinking, so I just YouTubed how to make a website. It took me like 4 or 5 months to build the website, but I started putting products that I like and I recommend to people. And then Femversity was or is an education website. So I'm trying to start putting education. I only have a course. I only have 2 courses on there right now, but I have the happy, what is it? The vagina refresh reboot. And it's basically how to, it teaches people how to easily get rid of urinary tract infections naturally and vaginal infections, and have their vaginas feel better. So it's just like an 8 video course, because I was like finding that there's so much misinformation out there. I'm like, okay, let me make these little mini courses and put them out there, and then I have one out on there for health practitioners about how to read and interpret gut microbiome, because of how much the gut is actually involved in our overall health and wellness, from anything from chronic disease to obesity to sexual dysfunction. Because if our gut microbes are off, we can actually tend to have a lower sex drive. So it's not always hormones. So that's the thing I'm finding, that if we give people hormones and we're not dealing with their stressors or their gut health, the hormones don't work as well. So
Yeah, it's
yeah.
kind of a whole body. It's not just medicate. Like it's a whole thing it's holistic, it's pharmaceutical, it's a whole, because it's not just that we can, I mean, granted, I feel like if men went through this, there probably would be a magic pill that would fix everything.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
because it's women, we're supposed to just, I mean, it's funny that we're always just told to suck it up. And even our moms would teach us that, like, oh, you have cramps. Well, that's just the way it is. And I'm like, do you feel the cramps that I'm having? Because having to sit through like high school and just feeling like there was someone inside, squeezing the crap out of my ovaries, I'm like, this is really not pleasant. And then having to pretend everything's fine when I wanted to punch everybody in the classroom because I just felt terrible. But I hope that by Gen X speaking up and the millennials starting to speak up, that we can change that conversation around puberty, around menopause and perimenopause, that you don't just have to suck it up. And it's okay to, if you want to be pissed off about it, fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you want to get help, like, because we can't just keep doing as women, just suck it up. Like, that's not healthy
Yeah.
in so many levels.
And I think there's going to be a bigger push because of Gen X to do more research. The argument has always been why they don't like to do research on women is because women can get pregnant, and because the menstrual cycle is so complicated. And it is complicated. There's like estrogen is high at the beginning of the month, progesterone is high. And those hormones can affect not only our brain function, but they affect like our tendency for our muscles and our ligaments to respond to stressors. So it's research is done on men because men are simple. There's Yes, I said that. You can quote me on that one. No, they're just simpler biologically to deal with. So that, and no pharmaceutical company wants to be responsible for trying a drug out on somebody and now becomes pregnant and now affecting a child. So I don't know how you get around that, but we do need a lot more research on medications, and just more research on women in general. So, yeah.
Hopefully we will, see that happen in our lifetimes, or at least in maybe my niece's lifetimes. They're both 12, and I feel like I'm going to be the aunt that's like, okay, you've gone through puberty. Let me tell you what's coming up next and what you need to start paying attention for, so that you don't just one day be like, why do I feel 25 different ways in an hour? And like, why all of a sudden my lower stomach just sticking out for no reason, which that's like one of the things I think that is really frustrating, is just the weight gain for like no reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we're dealing with the weight gain is what ends up happening is after the age of 30, we start losing about 8% of our muscle mass every decade that we live. So you have a combination of losing muscle mass, and then both in men and women, testosterone is decreasing. That's going to add to muscle loss. And muscle is a more metabolically active tissue. And so it basically helps us. Muscle burns more calories. So we're losing that. So we're not burning off as many calories, and then we're slowly creeping on that weight that's starting to happen. So really, one of the tricks in that perimenopause and beyond period is we definitely need strength training. So you definitely need strength or resistance training to kind of build that muscle, and you need protein. And so most of us don't get enough protein in our diet. Some of the recommendations are, and depending on which studies you look at, is to get at least a gram of protein in per pound or per kilogram of ideal body weight. So I usually shoot for per pound. So like my ideal body weight, which I'm not at, I'm probably about 25 pounds over my ideal body weight, but my ideal body weight is about 130 pounds from my height. So I should be getting about 130 grams of protein in a day, which becomes pretty much a job. It's tough to get that, but that can really help battle that muscle loss, which can then help with metabolism. So
And
yeah.
also, isn't it recently came out too, just in general, Americans don't get enough fiber, which is
Oh gosh, yeah.
not great. Like our diets they're not great.
And you need the fiber to support the healthy bacteria in your gut. And you need the healthy bacteria in your gut to prevent you from getting chronic disease, autoimmune diseases, low libido, recurrent vaginal infections, recurrent yeast infections, all originate with gut bacteria. So so you need the fiber and fermented foods. So we don't get enough fermented foods in our diets. And some people don't tolerate fermented foods like kombucha or kimchi or yogurt or kefir, but if not, like then taking a broad spectrum probiotic, meaning a probiotic that has many, many, many different types of bacteria in it.
Yeah. And the strength training, I wish I had started it when I was younger.
Yeah, me too.
But I remember trying it, I think in college when I was like, I don't want to get bulky because I can I definitely can put on the muscle. But that was silly and now I'm like, I just for my birthday, my 51st birthday, I was like, I asked my brother and sister, I'm like, I need adjustable weights because I've outgrown my weights and I don't want a bunch of, I need less equipment, but more equipment. And I love that I have to go up in weight because I'm getting stronger. And it just feels like I did a workout yesterday. I'm like, this feels amazing. I feel so much better. I love that I'm getting stronger. I'm supporting, my bone health too, because we are at risk for falls as we get older. And if you fall, that can be kind of it. So I recommend, like strength training, it's amazing. It makes you feel so good about yourself.
Yeah, and that's that. We grew up going back Gen X. We grew up during the aerobics era. I mean, Jane
Yes.
Fonda,
Yeah.
Richard Simmons, and everyone was like aerobics, and the little leotards and like leg warmers, and really, not that aerobics is like we should be, and we still need that for heart health, but it's more important to be getting some of that strength training and resistance training for like overall wellness and mobility. they're not joking when they say sitting is like the new smoking. I mean, a lot of us are sitting way too much, and because now all of a sudden you get up and you move and there's a lot of aches and pains, and because we kind of end up contracting like our big muscles in our abdomen and our back, our psoas, and that puts a lot of strain on our backs and our hips and our legs. So the more we get, the more we're moving and doing things. And that's something also that our grandparents didn't do. They were walking everywhere. They weren't sitting at desks all day long. They were doing physical labor. So, this is another area that we're seeing with Gen X and beyond, having all these, kind of aches and pains, and then decreased mobility. And that can affect your longevity. Because listen, when I'm in my 70s, 80s, I still want to be able to move around and get around. One of my friends, and you can find her on social media, her name's Sandra Scheinbaum. She's in her 70s. And man, she can run circles around me in the gym. Like, she always is posting videos of like things that she's like lifting and doing. And I'm like, I always tell her, I'm like, I want to be just like you when I grow up. And she's this little tiny thing. She's so cute, but she's so tough and vital. And I think it's also just like the attitude, like going in with an attitude that like, I'm just going to live life to the fullest. So
yeah. And really, we think in the Gen X attitude of, we got our, training on the playground of trying to either stay alive on the playground or like showing off all these flips and things we were doing on the metal bars, or trying to avoid, there was dodgeball and Red Rover and kickball and all those things. And then trying to avoid the playground, fights that would sometimes happen. Like, I feel like we need to go back to our scrappiness and be like, just start, like you can just start walking, start lifting some weights. Like, yoga is great for the stress and the mobility. Like, just do something because you'll feel better. And like we can joke about, I always joke that I can lift all this weights and then I go to sleep. And when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, trying to walk my feet or not. I'm like, what? Why is it I can lift these heavy weights, but then in the morning, my body's like, I'm sorry, you laid down for way too long, and, like shuffle into the bathroom. So I think you have to have a sense of humor about getting older, but also you want to make sure, that we're living as long as possible. And because Gen X needs to be here to just annoy, we need to be here to like being loud and obnoxious and,
and torture all the generations on either side of us. I think that is I think that is definitely my goal in life.
Yeah. I love watching when Gen Z will try to come after, Gen X online. I'm like, oh, wrong move, wrong. Like, no one cared about our feelings. We don't care about yours. And also, we're really good at sarcasm. So you're just going to lose this battle. And it's highly entertaining.
I mean, that's one of the things I'm seeing, like with my own kids right now, that they don't have, and that they're going to suffer even more so than we did. Is I remember as a kid, like getting on my bike and just going for hours. And I think about it, like there were no cell phones, there was no pagers at that time. Like, God, I just can't believe I said pager. But there was no way to get in touch with you. And I was like, I can't believe my mom let me just go out into the world and just ride my bike for hours and hours and hours. So at least we have that. We probably were a lot more physically active when we were younger than the kids nowadays, because I know
our parents were like, go outside. Like, you're annoying me. I don't want to hear you. Go outside. Or if you said to your parents, I'm bored, my mom would be like, I'm not your entertainment committee. And then she's like, I'll give you something to do. And you're like, nope, I'm good. Because that would be chores or something you didn't want to do. So but it's true. Kids are so attached to their, their phones and their tablets, and they're not getting as much activity as,
we had to use our imagination. Like, we had to use our imagination a lot more. So we need to go back to those. We need to really go back to those skills that we had as kids, because that's what's going to keep us young and healthy for a long time. So
and kids are struggling with learning, and like they're behind in reading because they don't have, like, my niece and nephew, one's in high school and one's in junior high. I have another niece in junior, but she just started junior high. They don't have actual books. Like, everything's on their tablet, and I'm like, that's really hard to learn. And they're not right. Like, there's something about writing, and everyone has different learning styles. And I wonder how they're gonna, when they get our age, how they're gonna deal with. Maybe they'll be more empowered, at least with perimenopause and menopause. They'll be like, I already know. My mother went through this. My aunt went through this. My grandmother. I know what to do. And they won't have to like be in the weeds trying to figure it out. But well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and talking about all the world of perimenopause and menopause. And I feel like GenX is definitely leading the charge, and doctors in GenX are helping as well. So we're all working together. But I will include all of your information in the show notes. But is there any particular place that's like, if people want to connect with you or find out what you're up to, like where's the best place to send them?
Yeah, I am all over social media. In fact, actually, I forgot to post today, but usually I post every single day in one form or another. I was not smart enough to make my name the same across all platforms, but if you look up Betsy, Betsy Greenleaf, you'll find me. I do have a couple different ones. I have like a couple different ones on Instagram because I split it into women's health and men's health. And same thing on TikTok. I have the women's health and the men's health one. Okay. But you can find me on any platforms. At pauseinstitute.com, that like menopause, it's PAUSE Institute. PAUSE Institute.com. I was like, wait, did I spell that right? Pauseinstitute.com. There is a hormone quiz, a free hormone quiz where you can kind of get a basic understanding of where your hormones may be and whether you need to see somebody or not. So you can take that for free there. Also, pelvicfloorstore.com. I'll give you a coupon for 10% off. It'll be GenX will be the code for 10% off. And there we have everything from healthy lubes to intimate devices to supplements for bladder health and lots of other fun things on that website.
And you also have some, have your own podcast, right? Several that you're on.
And in fact, actually, I'm in the middle of starting a new show called She Said, which will be out soon. Oh, and I always forget, I produced a menopause rock album. I always forget about this. So it's called Menopause Memo, and you can find that on Apple and Spotify and anywhere that you listen to music. So
perfect. Well, I will include all of that.
That was definitely a Gen X move because we were sitting around going, there's not enough. There's no music out there supporting us in midlife, especially through menopause. And we were like, there should be more menopause music. And it started as a complete joke of my friends. And then I was like, I'm going to figure out. That's the problem is every time there's a challenge, I'm like, I'm going to figure out how to do that. So we produced and put that album out there. So and that people are actually listening. So
I mean, we need more music that we can like rock out to and be like, this is how I'm feeling. This song is perfect for that.
Yeah, and it's not I have to say it's not the most perfect album. I'm like, now that I've figured out how to produce things a little bit better, because we were doing some of the mixing and stuff ourselves. It would kind of, I'm starting to think it's probably time for another album that'll come out and be even better. But yeah, stay tuned to that.
You can do this. What is the series that they have music now, or what was that what they had when we were younger, or like they would put a compilation together of music. I can't remember what it was called, or they would do like kids like would redo some of our songs. And I'm like, I don't think this is a song that kids should be.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, have like a menopause series because I think, that's awesome. Well, thank you again. It was so great to have you on the podcast. And yes, look for all of her information and links to everything in the show notes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again so much to my guest, Dr. Betsy Greenleaf. That was such a engaging, interesting, fun conversation. I hope you learned a lot, got a lot out of it, enjoyed hearing us a little bit of reminiscing. We can't have a Gen X podcast without reminiscing a little bit about our childhood and really what's kind of, made us what we are. And it's interesting to think about, like, because of the way that we were raised and the things that we were exposed to, like why we're probably also stressed. But I think it was really informative, and it's always nice to talk to experts and doctors in this field who really do care about women, whether they are women or not, and really are trying to move this conversation forward and help us. And remember, advocate for yourselves, make the best informed decision that's right for you, and know that, there's lots of different options, and just to take care of yourself and enjoy life so that we can be the scrappy, sarcastic generation that we are for as long as possible. Be sure to look in the show notes for the links and more information about Dr. Greenleaf. Don't forget that our book club, our first book club pick is A Wrinkle in Time. I will include that too, to pick up the book. We'll be talking about it in December. So I hope that you will join me for that. And I'm not sure if I'm going to do another episode. I might do like a quick one at the end of the month, sharing where I am on my journey. If you're curious, let me know. Or if you would like to share where you are in your journey, because I definitely had some updates and changes. I'm still pushing and trudging along, getting that protein and lifting those weights. So without further ado, my fellow Gen Xers, until next time, don't you forget about me, because I won't forget about you.